Chapter 1: The House Behind the Walls. Asheville, North Carolina used to fall asleep early. The tree-lined streets grew nearly empty after 9 o'clock, lit only by old street lamps and the soft glow spilling from house windows. On one of those streets, surrounded by tall trees and enclosed by an unusually high wall, stood the Miller family's home. To passers-by, the wall seemed excessive. To those who lived inside, it was necessary. David Miller, the father, left home before dawn and often returned late at night. Sarah, his wife, kept the household running with quiet precision, balancing the home, the responsibilities, and their 3 daughters, Emily, Anna, and Lucy. During the day, the girls filled the backyard with laughter, always accompanied by 3 canine shadows that never strayed far. There lived Bella, the white bull terrier with an alert gaze, Max, the golden, friendly golden retriever, and Shadow, the black-coated German shepherd, nearly invisible when standing still, as if the darkness itself recognized him as part of it. At night, when the lights went out and the neighborhood sank into silence, the house seemed peaceful. But behind the walls, something always remained awake, watching, listening, waiting. Chapter 2: 3 Dogs, 3 Instincts. The dogs were part of the Miller family as much as any shared last name in that house. Each of them occupied a distinct space, as if the backyard had been divided by invisible personalities. Bella, the female bull terrier, always moved with a tense posture and a wary gaze. She disliked strangers and instinctively positioned herself between the girls and anyone who came too close. Max, the golden retriever, was the complete opposite. His tail never stopped wagging, and he welcomed everyone like old friends, believing the entire world was a safe place. Shadow, however, did not use to seek attention. The black-coated German shepherd moved in silence, observing everything from a distance. His dark eyes seemed constantly alert to things no one else noticed. While Bella barked and Max ran around, Shadow simply analyzed. He knew every sound of the house, every creak of the gate, every step that didn't match the usual rhythm. At night, he did not sleep deeply like the others. He remained still, lying near the wall, like an invisible sentry. To some, he was just a difficult dog. To others, simply a mystery not yet understood. Chapter 3: The Dog Who Didn't Fit In. As time went by, it became clear that Shadow didn't fit into the Miller family's quiet routine. Unlike Bella and Max, he didn't respond well to repeated commands, didn't accept strangers, and reacted rigidly to any change in the environment. All it took was an unfamiliar car stopping on the street for him to rise to his feet, perfectly still, staring at the gate as if anticipating something invisible. To David, this wasn't vigilance, it was trouble. The father watched the dog with growing distrust, worried about the girls, about visitors, about what might happen if Shadow ever lost control. Silent arguments began to surface at night, always ending with the same sentence: "Maybe this dog is too much for us." Sarah tried to soften the idea, saying he just needed time, but even she wasn't sure. Only Emily seemed to understand Shadow. The girl would sit beside him in the yard, without speaking, without touching him, simply being there. And curiously, it was in those moments that the dog relaxed, as if he recognized in her someone who also watched the world before choosing to trust it. Chapter 4: The Invisible Bond. Among everyone in the house, it was Emily who saw Shadow differently. While the adults saw an unpredictable dog and her sisters avoided him, Emily saw silence, attention, and something she couldn't quite name. She was 12 years old and often spent her afternoons sitting in the backyard, leaning against the tall wall, reading, or simply watching the sky change colors. Shadow would always approach during those moments, unhurried, lying down just a few feet away. He didn't ask for affection. He didn't look away. He simply stayed. Emily was the one who noticed that Shadow never truly slept. His eyes opened at the slightest unfamiliar sound, at any movement that didn't belong. She was the one who realized he never accepted food thrown by strangers, not even when Bella and Max gave in easily. To Emily, that wasn't aggression. It was caution. When David brought up the idea of getting rid of the dog again, her reaction was immediate. She cried, begged, promised to help in any way she could. She said Shadow wasn't dangerous, just too aware for a world that everyone else pretended was safe. The discussion ended without a decision, but something had changed. That night, Shadow lay down in front of Emily's bedroom door, as if he had understood everything. And for the first time, she was certain. If something ever threatened that house, he would be the first to know.
Chapter 5: The Night Without the Father. The routine of the house changed subtly that night. David left earlier than usual, called in to cover an extra shift. The sound of his car fading down the quiet street marked the beginning of an absence no one imagined would be so important. Sarah locked the doors, turned off the lights downstairs, and took the girls to bed, repeating the familiar ritual meant to keep any sense of insecurity away. Bella and Max settled in quickly, content after their last meal of the day. Shadow, however, did not lie down. He walked the yard in slow circles, scenting the air as if something had shifted direction. The wind carried unfamiliar smells, muffled sounds, small changes that did not belong to that house. On the other side of the wall, distant footsteps echoed briefly and then stopped. No barking, no alarms, only attention. Inside the house, everything seemed normal.
The clock moved forward, bedroom lights went out, and the neighborhood sank into deep silence. To anyone watching from the outside, the Miller house looked vulnerable, too calm, too ordinary. But Shadow remained awake, sitting near the back gate, his eyes fixed on the darkness. He did not know what was coming, only that this night was not like the others. Chapter 6: The Mistake That Cost Dearly. On the other side of the wall, a man had been watching the house long enough to learn its habits. He knew when the lights went out, when the father's car was not in the driveway, and most importantly, he knew there were dogs. To him, that wasn't an obstacle, just a detail. Carefully, he tossed small pieces of food over the wall, chosen to silence any unwanted barking. Bella was the first to approach, sniffing and devouring the treats without hesitation. Max followed soon after, confident, tail wagging, suspecting nothing. Shadow only watched. He did not move forward, he did not sniff. His eyes tracked every movement in the darkness. When the other dogs wandered off, he slowly lay down, pretending indifference, controlling his breathing as if he had fallen asleep. The man, satisfied by the silence, believed the plan had worked. Minutes later, the back gate was forced open with care. No barking echoed, no lights turned on. To the intruder, the house was subdued. What he did not realize was that even motionless, Shadow remained fully awake. His muscles were tense, his body ready to react. This was not an ordinary night, and that mistake would be irreversible. Chapter 7: The Sound That Shouldn't Exist. The intruder entered through the kitchen with calculated steps, moving like someone accustomed to silence. The door closed behind him almost without a sound, and for a few seconds, everything seemed under control. Moonlight filtered through the window, casting long shadows across the cold floor. He moved toward the counter, searching for something valuable, something small enough to take quickly. That was when he made the simplest and most decisive mistake. A poorly balanced glass rolled off the edge and shattered on the floor, breaking the silence of the house. Upstairs, Sarah opened her eyes immediately. The sound didn't match the calm of the early morning hours. It wasn't the wind. It wasn't one of the dogs. It was something wrong. She got up slowly, her heart racing, and walked down the dark hallway, trying not to make any noise. She thought of the girls, of the closed bedroom doors, and felt a chill run up her spine. As she reached the stairs, she heard footsteps in the kitchen. Human footsteps. The air felt too heavy to breathe. Sarah descended the last steps, and when she turned on the light,
saw the man standing in front of her. Time seemed to slow down. Outside, in the backyard, something moved in the darkness. Shadow had stood up.
Chapter 8. Face to Face. For a moment, no one moved. The kitchen light illuminated the intruder's face, revealing wide eyes and uneven breathing. Sarah felt her body freeze, as if the floor had vanished beneath her feet. The man reacted first. With a quick motion, he grabbed a knife from the counter, holding it clumsily but threateningly. The metal reflected the light, and that single glint was enough to give fear a tangible shape. Sarah stepped back. She thought about screaming, but no sound came out. She thought about running, but her legs wouldn't respond. Behind her, the hallway led to the girls' bedrooms, and that awareness kept her standing. The intruder advanced slightly, muttering confused words, demanding silence, demanding compliance. Every second stretched too long. Outside, Shadow moved forward without making a sound. He sensed the tension in the air before hearing anything.
The back door, slightly ajar, leaked the scent of fear and danger. His muscles tightened, focus absolute. As the man raised the knife, preparing to close the final distance, something moved too fast to be clearly seen. The attack was not announced by any bark, only by the sudden impact that changed the course of that night.
Chapter 9. The Awakened Guardian. The impact came from below, fast and precise. The intruder felt the weight before the pain, a violent shock that threw him off balance instantly. Canines clamped onto his leg, not chaotically, but firm and calculated, as if they knew exactly where to strike. The man screamed, the knife slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a dull sound. He tried to pull free, but the pressure increased, forcing him down onto his knees. Every movement was met with more force, more control. There was no rage in the attack, there was purpose. Shadow did not bark, he did not growl. His eyes were locked in place, his entire body anchored to the ground, preventing any attempt to move forward. The man crawled, desperate, trying to reach the door, feeling his own strength fade away. To Sarah, the scene felt unreal. Fear gave way to shock, then to understanding. The threat had been stopped. When the intruder finally managed to break free and flee, limping through the back door, silence took over the house once again. Shadow remained still for a few seconds, making sure the danger was gone. Only then did he slowly turn toward Sarah. He did not approach her. He simply stayed there, between her and the darkness, as he always had. For the first time, Sarah took a deep breath, and she understood that the dog had never been the problem. He had always been the solution.
Chapter 10. After the Silence. The distant sound of approaching sirens seemed irrelevant compared to the emptiness that had taken over the house. Sarah leaned against the counter, feeling her legs finally give way. The kitchen floor still held the shattered glass, the fallen knife, and the marks of chaos that had lasted only a few minutes, but had changed everything. The girls appeared at the top of the stairs, frightened, calling for their mother. Sarah held them tightly, feeling the trembling in her own arms as she tried to convey a sense of safety she did not yet fully possess. Shadow sat near the back door, alert but calm. When the police arrived and asked questions, he did not react. He simply watched, as if he knew his part had already been done. Bella and Max slowly woke up, confused, not understanding why the air still carried tension. Later, when the house returned to true silence, Sarah sat on the floor beside Shadow.
For the first time, she ran her hand over his dark head, feeling the warmth of a body that had never left her. She said nothing. She didn't need to. The dog closed his eyes for a moment, finally resting. That night, the Miller family did not sleep well, but something had changed forever. Fear gave way to certainty. Inside those high walls, there did not live a difficult animal. There lived a guardian.
Chapter 11. The Father's Return. The sun had not yet fully broken the horizon when David Miller parked the car in front of the house. Something was wrong. The exterior lights were on, the back door didn't seem completely aligned, and there was a police car parked a few yards away. David's heart began to race even before he turned off the engine. When he went inside, he found Sarah sitting on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, with the girls sleeping together beside her. The relief of seeing them safe came with a quiet sense of guilt. Sarah told him everything without interruption. She spoke about the noise, the man, the knife, the moment she thought she wouldn't be able to protect her daughters. When she mentioned Shadow, her voice faltered. David looked at the dog, lying near the door, with calm, alert as always. Each word struck him with the weight of what could have happened. For a few seconds, David said nothing. Then he slowly stepped forward and knelt in front of Shadow. The dog raised his head, studying him with the same attentive eyes as ever. David took a deep breath and touched his forehead in a simple, final gesture. "You stay," he said quietly. It wasn't an order. It was an apology. In that moment, David understood that not every protector seeks affection. Some simply fulfill their mission.
Chapter 12. The Guardian of the House. The days that followed brought a new routine to the Miller household. The wall was still high, the street still quiet, but the family's perspective had changed. Shadow was no longer watched with apprehension, but with respect. The girls began greeting him as they left for school, and Sarah started leaving the backyard door open a little longer, trusting a presence that had always been there. Bella and Max returned to their usual calm, taking up their familiar spots, while Shadow remained alert, without needing to prove anything anymore. Emily knew that nothing would ever be exactly the same. At night, Shadow began sleeping in front of the bedrooms, moving only when the silence changed its texture, not out of distrust, but by choice. David reinforced locks and adjusted routines, but he never again questioned the dog's instinct. He learned that not all protection makes noise.
The story of that night was not told to the neighbors in detail. There was no need. Inside the house, the truth was enough. The danger had been driven away not by human strength or technology, but by attention, patience, and instinct. Behind the high walls, there did not live a difficult animal. There lived a silent guardian, watching the world without ever fully sleeping, ready to act when all others failed.